The news of Emma Smith's passing hit like a bolt from the blue on an otherwise ordinary day. Olivia felt her legs weaken, her hand instinctively clutching her chest as if to steady her racing heart. Though her mother-in-law had been battling a serious illness for years, the finality of the announcement still caught her off guard, leaving her breathless. They weren't bound by blood, yet the bond they shared ran deeper than many biological ties between mothers and daughters. Emma had always been Olivia's rock, seeing in her a quiet strength, kindness, and warmth that even Ethan, her own son, often overlooked. Alongside the heartbreaking news came a formal invitation to the reading of Emma's will. Olivia never anticipated any material inheritance. Her only wish was to honor Emma's memory with gratitude and love, cherishing the countless moments they'd shared over cups of tea and homemade apple pie in Emma's cozy kitchen. The day of the will reading dawned gray and dreary, with a persistent drizzle that mirrored Olivia's somber mood. She slipped into a modest black dress, hoping it would mask the nervous trembling she couldn't shake. As she approached the law office, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. But then her eyes caught a sight that stopped her cold on the steps of the building. There stood Ethan, her estranged husband, but he wasn't alone. Beside him, with a smug, self-satisfied grin, was Ava, young, overly made up, looking like she'd stepped out of a glossy magazine. In her arms, she cradled a small bundle, the faint sound of a baby's soft breathing escaping from it. Their baby. The world seemed to tilt beneath Olivia's feet. She'd had her suspicions for months, whispers and half-truths gnawing at her. But to see it confirmed so blatantly in this raw, painful moment felt like a shard of glass piercing straight through her heart. Ava, catching Olivia's gaze, shot her a look of icy triumph, her eyes glinting with a cruel sense of victory. Ethan had always dismissed Olivia as weak, spineless, a nobody. What he wanted was someone bold and ruthless like Ava, someone who'd stop at nothing to get what she desired. Olivia felt a wave of nausea rise in her throat, the urge to turn on her heel and flee overwhelming her, to vanish and never face these people again. Yet something fiercer stirred within her, a mix of anger, pride, and a stubborn need to know the truth, anchoring her in place. With every ounce of willpower, she forced herself up the steps, her chin held high. Ethan and Ava stepped aside to let her pass, their mocking smirks cutting deeper than any words could. Olivia did her best to hide the sting of their disdain, keeping her expression as neutral as she could manage. Inside the law office's waiting room, Attorney Smith greeted her with a polite nod and a warm, "Good morning, Mrs. Johnson," gesturing for her to take a seat. Ethan and Ava settled across from her, the air between them crackling with unspoken tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. Olivia gripped her purse tightly, her focus darting to the steady ticking of the wall clock, the faint, musty scent of old documents, and the polished gleam of the wooden table, anything to avoid meeting their eyes. After what felt like an eternity, Attorney Smith cleared his throat, breaking the oppressive silence. "All right, folks," he began in a measured tone. "We're gathered here today for the reading of the late Emma Smith's last will and testament. Present are all relevant parties. Her son, Ethan Johnson, his companion, Ava, and—" He hesitated briefly, glancing at Olivia. Olivia Johnson. The word wife hung unspoken in the air, a bitter reminder of a title that still legally belonged to her, though in reality, her marriage to Ethan had crumbled the first time she'd caught him with Ava, laughing over burgers at the local diner as if she didn't exist. Attorney Smith opened a thick manila folder, pulling out a few crisp sheets of paper. He scanned them carefully, adjusted his glasses with a deliberate motion, and looked up at the trio once more. "Before we proceed with the formal reading," he added, his voice steady, "I should mention that there's a personal letter from Emma attached to the will. It will be read aloud once we've gone through the legal details." He cleared his throat again, the sound echoing in the tense room, and began to read. Ethan's voice droned on in a flat, emotionless tone, yet Olivia clung to every word as if her life depended on it. I, Emma Jane Smith, being of sound mind and clear judgment, hereby bequeath all my personal and real property. He listed the assets methodically. A spacious apartment in the heart of downtown, a cozy cabin in the countryside, several substantial bank accounts, and a portfolio of stocks. Olivia sat there, enveloped in a haze of disbelief as the words washed over her. It all felt surreal, like a distant dream she couldn't quite grasp. She hadn't expected a single thing. All the aforementioned property I bequeath to... The lawyer paused for effect. Olivia Marie Johnson. A heavy silence descended upon the room, so thick you could cut it with a knife. Olivia couldn't trust her own ears. Everything? To her? Ethan and Ava exchanged a glance, their expressions a volatile mix of shock and barely concealed rage. Attorney Smith carried on, unfazed by the palpable tension. If Olivia Johnson declines this inheritance, it shall be transferred in full to a charitable foundation supporting children battling cancer. Snapping out of her daze, Olivia knew she wouldn't refuse. Not out of greed, but out of a deep sense of duty to honor Emma's final wishes. A woman who had meant so much to her. Ethan was the first to crack under the weight of the moment. "This has to be a mistake!" he bellowed, leaping from his chair with such force that it scraped against the hardwood floor. "There's no way Mom would do this to us!" Ava jumped up right after him, her voice shrill with indignation. "Yeah, this must be some kind of forgery," she screeched, pointing an accusing finger. "This lawyer's nothing but a con artist." Attorney Smith peered at them over the rim of his glasses, his demeanor as calm as a summer lake. "I understand this comes as a surprise," he said evenly, "but I assure you, this will was drafted and notarized in full compliance with the law. You're welcome to contest it in court, though I must caution you, the odds of success are slim at best." Ethan clenched his fists, his knuckles whitening with the strain. He couldn't wrap his head around it. His own mother, cutting him out completely. He'd always assumed, as the only son, he'd inherit the lion's share, while Olivia, that quiet little nobody, would be lucky to get a few crumbs. "You must have sweet-talked her," he roared at Olivia, his face flushed with fury. "You tricked her somehow, didn't you?" Olivia flinched at the venom in his tone, her heart racing. She couldn't fathom why he despised her so much. What had she ever done to deserve this? "Ethan, that's enough!" Ava snapped, trying to rein him in as she tugged at his sleeve. "Don't make a scene in front of everyone." But Ethan was beyond reason, consumed by a storm of anger, humiliation, and betrayal. Attorney Smith raised a hand, calling for order with the authority of someone used to diffusing family dramas over Sunday roast disputes. "I must ask you to maintain decorum," he stated firmly. "And as I mentioned earlier, there's a personal letter from Emma attached to the will. I believe you'll want to hear it." He pulled another sheet of paper from his folder and began to read, his voice now carrying a somber, almost tender note. "My dearest Olivia," Emma had written, "if you're hearing this, it means I've left this world behind. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything you've done for me. You weren't just my daughter-in-law. You were the daughter I never had. You took care of me, stood by me, loved me when I needed it most. Whether it was bringing over homemade apple pie on a gloomy day or just sitting with me over a cup of tea. I know Ethan hasn't appreciated you, that he's caused you so much pain, but I have faith in you, Olivia. You're a strong, wise woman, and you deserve every bit of happiness. I hope this helps you find it." The lawyer's voice wavered for a moment. He cleared his throat and pressed on. "Ethan, I'm deeply disappointed in you. I'm aware of your affair with Ava. I know a child is on the way. I don't judge you for it, but it breaks my heart to see how you've betrayed Olivia. She was a devoted wife, loving you with every fiber of her being, and yet you deceived her, humiliated her, and broke her trust. I can't leave my estate to you. I refuse to let you squander it on your reckless escapades. My wish is for it to benefit Olivia, to give her a fresh start, a chance to build a life filled with happiness. Farewell, my son. I hope one day you'll come to see the error of your ways." Olivia sat quietly as the letter from Emma Smith was read aloud, tears streaming down her face. She had no idea that her mother-in-law had been aware of Ethan's betrayal all along. Ethan, on the other hand, was in complete disbelief that his own mother could hold such a harsh opinion of him. He had always believed he was her golden boy, the one she'd forgive no matter what. Ava sat in silence, her expression a mix of frustration and barely concealed anger. In an instant, she realized her dreams of a life of luxury had crumbled to dust. When the lawyer finished reading the letter, a heavy silence fell over the room. No one uttered a word. Each person was lost in their own whirlwind of thoughts, emotions, and regrets. Olivia lifted her gaze to meet Ethan's. She could see the desperation and humiliation etched on his face, yet the memories of the pain he'd caused her were still raw. Countless sleepless nights, endless tears, and the bitter sting of disappointment. She remembered how he had shattered her trust and trampled on her love. Breaking the silence, the lawyer, Mr. Smith, cleared his throat and said in a formal tone, "Hey, folks, the last will and testament of Emma Smith has been read. If there are no questions, you're free to go." Ava, who had been sitting with a scowl, suddenly turned pale, her eyes flashing with desperation as she spun toward Ethan. "How could this happen, Ethan?" she demanded, her voice trembling with raw emotion. "You swore to me that everything would be ours, that your mom adored you and would never cut you out of her will." Ethan didn't respond, his head hanging low in shame. He couldn't even bring himself to look her in the eye. He had bought into his own delusions, convinced of his invincibility, only to now stand broken and defeated. Ava, realizing there was nothing left to hope for, shoved him aside with a sneer. "You're nothing but a loser!" she spat venomously. "I don't need a man like you dragging me down." Without waiting for a reply, she stormed out of the room, clutching her child tightly, leaving Ethan standing alone in the echoing silence. He didn't even try to stop her. At that moment, he felt utterly numb, as if nothing mattered anymore. Olivia watched the scene unfold with a strange sense of detachment. Part of her felt a pang of pity for Ethan, but it was tangled up with disdain and lingering hurt. She saw his world collapsing around him, saw how those who had once sworn their loyalty were now turning their backs on him. Yet she also knew he had brought this upon himself. After a moment, Ethan seemed to snap out of his daze and turned to Olivia, tears welling in his eyes. "Liv, please forgive me," he whispered, reaching for her hand with a trembling grip. "I've been a complete fool. I made a terrible mistake. I'm begging you, give me a chance to make things right." Olivia pulled her hand away sharply, her gaze icy and unyielding. "Make what right, Ethan?" she asked, her voice steady as she stared him down. "Turn back the clock? Erase the betrayal? Pretend your child with her doesn't exist?" "No, Ethan, that's not possible." Ethan dropped to his knees, his voice breaking as he pleaded, "Please, Liv. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I've got nothing left. Ava walked out on me, and I'm all alone now. I'm begging you to help me. Just share a small part of the inheritance. I've got nowhere to go." Olivia stood silent, looking down at him. She could see the despair and humiliation in his eyes, but the memories of her own suffering weighed heavily on her heart. Those late nights crying over a cold cup of coffee, the whispered arguments that left her feeling hollow, the betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. "Ethan," she finally said, her tone firm and resolute. "I get that you're in a rough spot right now, but I'm not going to bail you out. I've got my own life to rebuild, and I can't carry your burdens too. You made your choices, and now you've got to live with them." She turned away, her mind already drifting to simpler things, like grabbing a comforting slice of apple pie from the diner down the street, a small indulgence to ease the heaviness of the day. Ethan remained on his knees, a broken man in a room that felt emptier than ever, knowing he had lost not just his inheritance, but any hope of redemption. You made your own choices, and you're the one who tore your life apart. I'm not going to pay the price for your mistakes. Ethan looked up at her, his eyes brimming with tears, a silent plea etched across his face. Olivia, how can you say that? We were a family. We built a life together over so many years. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive me? Olivia shook her head slowly, her expression firm yet tinged with sorrow. Forgiving might be possible, but forgetting? Never. I'm not turning back the clock, Ethan. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed yourself, and you betrayed the love we once shared. So please, just let me go. I'm starting fresh, and I need space to do that. With those final words, she turned on her heel and walked out of the courtroom, her steps resolute, not once glancing back. Ethan remained on his knees, alone in the echoing silence, surrounded by the shattered remnants of his hopes and dreams. He was too late, and the weight of that realization crushed him. He had lost everything that ever mattered, and there was no one to blame but himself. Stepping outside the courthouse, Ethan was momentarily blinded by the harsh glare of the midday sun. It felt as though the entire world had turned its back on him. He had no idea where to go or what to do next. In that moment, the full depth of his mistakes sank in. He hadn't just lost Olivia. He'd lost a part of himself, becoming someone bitter, selfish, and cold. He had abandoned his values, his dreams, and the love that once defined him. Meanwhile, Olivia walked down the busy street, her gaze fixed ahead, a newfound sense of freedom lifting her spirits. She had endured pain and betrayal, but she hadn't broken. Instead, she emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever came next. Her life had been turned upside down. Just yesterday, she was a shadow of herself, lost in the routine of domestic life and unwavering loyalty to her husband. Today, she was the owner of a substantial inheritance and the master of her own destiny. Packing up didn't take long. Olivia took only the essentials, leaving behind anything tied to her past in the old apartment. Her lawyer, Mr. Smith, guided her through the paperwork and the sale of their house. He also recommended a small, up-and-coming town for her fresh start. It's a quiet place, peaceful, he assured her over a quick coffee at a local diner, and the folks there are friendly. It's exactly what you need right now to heal and rebuild. Olivia rented a modest apartment on the outskirts of town and invested most of her money into a quaint, slightly worn-down space right in the heart of the downtown area. It had once been a little bookstore, but it had sat empty for years. From the moment she saw it, Olivia knew it had potential. This would be her cafe, her very own dream come to life. The renovation process stretched over several months, and Olivia oversaw every detail with care, pouring not just her savings, but her heart into the project. She personally picked out warm, pastel wallpaper to create a welcoming vibe, ordered custom wooden tables and chairs from a local craftsman, and chose floral curtains that added a cozy, homey touch. Her vision was clear. She wanted a haven where people could escape the hustle and bustle of daily life, sip a steaming cup of coffee or tea, and share heartfelt conversations over homemade treats. She named it Haven, a word that perfectly captured the atmosphere she hoped to foster. The grand opening was understated. Olivia simply hung an open sign on the door and waited for her first customers. They didn't keep her waiting long. Two elderly ladies from the neighborhood were the first to wander in. Their curiosity piqued as they shuffled through the door with reusable grocery bags in hand. They spent a good while studying the menu, asking Olivia about her plans for the place, and finally ordered cups of chamomile tea with slices of her homemade apple pie, a classic comfort food around these parts. Olivia watched nervously as they took their first bites, her heart in her throat. "Well, dear," one of the ladies said with a warm smile adjusting her glasses after tasting the pie. "I've got to say, this is quite lovely. This pie reminds me of the kind my grandma used to bake for Sunday supper. Tastes like home." Olivia let out a sigh of relief, a grin spreading across her face. Later that day, a young couple stopped by after a minor spat over who forgot to pick up milk at the store. Typical small-town bickering. They settled into a corner booth, their tension easing as they shared a plate of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies, a staple treat that Olivia knew would resonate with locals. Word spread quickly, and soon Haven became a spot where neighbors dropped in for a quick chat over a hearty breakfast of pancakes and maple syrup, or lingered with friends over a late afternoon latte. Olivia knew she was building more than just a business. She was creating a community, a place where people felt they belonged, and for the first time in years, she felt she belonged too. This marked the first real triumph. Over time, the little cafe Haven began to attract a steady stream of regulars. Young moms pushing strollers, college students seeking a break from endless assignments, and older couples looking for a peaceful spot to chat over a warm drink. Olivia poured her heart into connecting with each one, listening to their stories, offering a kind word, or simply sharing a genuine smile. It was as if she blossomed before everyone's eyes, radiating newfound strength and self-assurance. She took pride in baking pies and cakes using cherished family recipes handed down from Emma Smith, a beloved mentor. Her apple pie, in particular, became the cafe's signature treat, its irresistible aroma of cinnamon and baked apples wafting down the street and drawing in curious passers-by. On quieter evenings, after the last customer had left and the cafe fell into a serene hush, Olivia often found herself thinking of Ethan. There was no bitterness in her heart, just a faint pang of sadness. She knew he had brought his own downfall upon himself, and in a way, she felt a twinge of pity for him. Yet pity didn't mean forgiveness. Deep down, she understood that the sting of his betrayal would never fully fade. Still, she had let him go, clearing space in her soul for new beginnings, for a fresh chapter filled with hope. One crisp fall morning, as Olivia prepared for the day ahead, wiping down the large front windows with a cloth, she caught sight of him. Ethan stood across the street, hunched against the chilly autumn breeze, looking worn and weary, as if the weight of years had suddenly crashed down on him. His face bore the marks of exhaustion, his eyes heavy with a kind of quiet resignation. Olivia froze for a moment, her heart skipping a beat. She hadn't expected to see him. Not here, not now. Pretending not to notice, she turned away, focusing on the glass. But Ethan began walking toward Haven with slow, hesitant steps, his posture betraying uncertainty. Olivia took a deep breath, trying to steady the tremor running through her. She had always known this moment would come eventually. Ethan paused just outside the door, seemingly unable to cross the threshold. He stared at the sign above the entrance for a long while, as if wrestling with his thoughts. From behind the window, Olivia watched him, her face a mask of calm, despite the storm inside. At last, he mustered the courage to push the door open, the little bell above chiming softly to announce his arrival. Olivia set down her cleaning rag and met his gaze with an icy composure. The cafe was sparsely populated at this early hour, just a handful of regulars sipping their morning coffee and nibbling on buttery croissants, a staple breakfast for many around here. The air grew thick with tension, and for a fleeting second, even the quiet chatter at the tables seemed to pause as everyone sensed the unspoken weight of the moment. Ethan approached the counter where Olivia stood, his eyes searching hers as if struggling to find the right words. "Hey, Olivia," he muttered, his voice rough and uncertain. She didn't respond, letting the silence hang between them. Her gaze studied his face intently, searching for any trace of remorse, any glimpse of the Ethan she once knew and loved. But all she saw was a shell of a man, broken by life and haunted by his own mistakes. "What do you want, Ethan?" she asked, her tone steady, betraying none of the turmoil beneath the surface. I I came to apologize, he stammered, dropping his eyes to the floor. I know I messed up big time. I get that I hurt you more than I can ever make up for. Olivia let out a bitter chuckle. An apology? Do you honestly think a few words can fix anything now? You tore my world apart, Ethan. You trampled on my trust, betrayed me in the worst way possible, and now you just stroll in here expecting me to absolve you? I know it doesn't change a thing, he replied, his voice trembling with emotion. But I had to say it. I carry this guilt with me every single day. And what exactly do you expect me to do about that? Olivia shot back, crossing her arms defensively, her tone sharp as she leaned against the counter, where a plate of freshly baked blueberry muffins, another local favorite, sat waiting for the morning rush. Emma, are you seriously expecting me to feel sorry for you? Do you think I'm just going to forgive and forget? Ethan's voice was low, almost a whisper, as he responded, I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Emma. I just need you to know that I'm truly sorry, that I realize the huge mistake I've made. Sorry? Olivia scoffed, her tone dripping with disdain. You're not sorry for hurting me. You're sorry for messing up your own perfect little life, for losing your cushy comfort zone. Ethan looked up at her, his eyes filled with raw pain and desperation, pleading for understanding. That's not true, Olivia. I'm torn apart over losing you. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, the brightest part of my world. For a fleeting moment, Olivia's hard exterior seemed to crack, but she quickly steeled herself against the emotion. She couldn't afford to trust his words anymore. Not after all the lies, not after the countless betrayals that had shattered her heart. It's too late, Ethan, she said with unwavering resolve. Too much has happened. Too many bridges have been burned. You're the one who tore everything apart. Ethan's shoulders slumped as he murmured, I know. I needed to see you one last time to make sure you're doing okay, that you found happiness. I am happy, Olivia replied, her voice firm and clear. I've built a life I love, and I've done it without you. Ethan gave a small, resigned nod, as if accepting the finality of her words. He turned slowly and began walking toward the door of the cozy little diner. Ethan, Olivia called after him, her tone sharp but steady. He paused and glanced back over his shoulder. Don't come back here, she said. Don't stir up old wounds. I'm done with the past. With you, I just want to live my life on my terms. Ethan didn't say a word. He simply nodded once more and stepped out into the crisp afternoon air. The little bell above the door jingled softly as it closed behind him, marking the end of their chapter. Olivia watched through the glass until his figure disappeared down the bustling sidewalk, past the local bakery and the corner store where folks often grabbed their morning coffee and a donut. A heavy weight seemed to lift from her chest, as if she'd finally let go of years of pent-up anger and hurt. All that remained was a quiet sense of relief, a newfound freedom that felt like a breath of fresh air after a long, stormy night. She turned to the handful of regulars sitting at the counter, sipping their black coffee and nibbling on slices of apple pie, who had been quietly observing the exchange. Sorry about that little drama, folks, she said with a forced but warm smile, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. The customers returned her smile, one older gentleman tipping his baseball cap as if to say, No worries, darlin', we've all been there. Olivia walked over to the large front window, gazing out at the street where kids rode their bikes and neighbors chatted over picket fences. Ethan was long gone, swallowed up by the rhythm of the small town. She picked up her cleaning rag and resumed wiping down the window, the afternoon sun streaming through and warming her face, filling her with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in years. She was free at last, and reclaiming her dignity felt like the sweetest victory of all. Later that evening, as she locked up the diner, Olivia glanced up at the neon sign flickering above the entrance. Cozy Corner. It was more than just a name. It was a feeling, a reflection of the life she'd carved out for herself in this tight-knit community. This little spot, with its worn booths and the smell of fresh-baked biscuits wafting from the kitchen, had become her sanctuary. It was where she'd found warmth, connection, and a sense of belonging after everything had fallen apart. Sure, life wasn't perfect. There were still the occasional grumbles from cranky customers over a late order of fries, or the petty squabbles with suppliers over delayed deliveries. But she handled it all with a smile. She knew tougher days and new adventures lay ahead, but she was ready to face them head on. After all, she'd earned this happiness, this quiet slice of peace, and she wasn't about to let anything or anyone take it away from her again.